Now, today's topic is chronic rhinitis. Now, how do you define chronic rhinitis? It is inflammation of the nasal mucosa that is chronic and occurring in various specific and non-specific infections. So, which are the non-specific infections? Chronic hypertrophic rhinitis, atrophic rhinitis. This is very important for us. Initially, when you had LAQs, you used to get a full LAQ on atrophic rhinitis. Now, there are many subtopics under atrophic rhinitis under which you can get SAQs. Okay. So you must know this topic very well. Then comes rhinitis caseosa, rhinitis sicca, allergic rhinitis, vasomotor rhinitis, and midline granulomas. These are all non-specific. Under specific, you know the etiology of the or the cause of the chronic rhinitis. That is lupus vulgaris of the nose is nothing but tuberculosis of cutaneous tuberculosis of nose. Then tuberculosis of nose as such, syphilis of the nose, leprosy nose, rhinosporidiosis and rhinoscleroma. Again, under this tuberculosis, rhinosporidiosis and rhinoscleroma is important, on which you can get, you must know these topics because you can get SAQs and MCQs on this. Now, what are the clinical features in this? You get a stuffy nose, you might get anosmia. On examination in hypertrophic rhinitis, there is hypertrophic congested mucosa, there is hypertrophy of the turbinates. Okay, now the treatment is unsatisfactory in these cases. You can treat them medically by antihistaminics and decongestants, and there are some surgical procedures done for this chronic rhinitis patients. That is partial turbinectomy. You are not supposed to do total turbinectomy, otherwise they are prone for atrophic changes of the nose and the turbinates. Then submucosal diathermy of the turbinate. So this by electrocautery, we go submucosally into the turbinate and you try to reduce the congestion. And third is cryosurgery of the turbinate. Now, rhinitis caseosa. So this is a rare chronic inflammation of the nose associated with formation of granulation and epithelial debris. The etiology is chronic sinusitis, foreign body, and disintegrated nasal polyp. Caseosa means there is white caseous material inside the nose, and that's why this name. Okay. So on anterior rhinoscopy, you get granulations in the nose with white caseous cheesy material. The HPR or histopathology shows chronic inflammation with keratin material, cholesterol crystals, and numerous organisms. You treat it by treating the underlying cause. Okay, so if there's a foreign body, you have to remove it, polyps to be excised, chronic sinusitis has to be treated, and then you clean this caseous debris from the nose. Now, we come to the main topic, that is atrophic rhinitis. So how do you define atrophic rhinitis? So it's a chronic inflammatory disease of the nose characterized by progressive atrophy of nasal mucosa and the underlying turbinate bones, resulting in roomy nasal cavity with formation of yellowish green crusts in the nose and thick secretions emitting a foul smell, which is called as ozena. Okay. Now, mind you, this smell is not complained by the patient. He has atrophy of the turbinates and the nasal mucosa, so his olfactory epithelium is distorted. So he will not get the smell, but the people surrounding the patient will complain of the fetid odor from the patient's exhibited from the or exiting from the patient's nose, and this is called as ozena. So primarily there are two types of atrophic rhinitis. One is primary atrophic rhinitis and second is secondary atrophic rhinitis. Now, primary atrophic rhinitis is common in young adolescent females of low socioeconomic status. The exact etiology is not known. Various theories are proposed for this type of atrophic rhinitis. So the first theory is the infective theory. So in this, various organisms like the Coccobacillus foetidis ozina, you must know these organisms. This might be asked in MCQ. So Coccobacillus foetidis ozina, Klebsiella ozina, Bacillus mucosis, and diphtheroids have been isolated from the nose of these atrophic rhinitis patients. These are responsible for the fetid odor or the bad odor that comes from their nose. They may be secondary invaders, we don't know, or might be primary etiological causative organisms. Now, the second theory is the endocrine theory. Now, as we see, this atrophic rhinitis is more common in the female population, and particularly those females at puberty. So this high incidence in females and improvement with estrogen therapy has given rise to speculations that endocrine imbalance of sex hormones has a big part to play in the causation of atrophic rhinitis. Then the third is the deficient diet theory. According to this theory, deficiency of iron and fat soluble vitamins, that is AD. So which are the fat soluble vitamins? A, D, E and K. So of those, vitamin A and vitamin D results in atrophic changes. Now the fourth theory is the developmental theory. In this it is seen that wide breadth of the nose and small and dry, atrophic and dry, have been blamed for atrophic changes in the nose. Then is the autoimmunity. So altered reactivity of the immune mechanism to normal nasal antigens also has been said to be a cause of atrophic rhinitis. Now the sixth is mechanical theory of Zoffel. What does it state? It states that skeletal defects like roomy nasal cavity, for example, if a patient has gross C-shaped DNS to one side, so the other nasal cavity is very roomy. So this is a skeletal defect and which may lead to atrophic changes in the opposite side of the nostril. So DNS is on one side and you get atrophic changes on the other side. This is explained by the mechanical theory of Zoffel. Now, seventh is the reflex sympathetic dystrophy syndrome, RSDS. This also may be a cause. Okay, so there is dysfunction of the sympathetic activity in the nose. Now, secondary atrophic rhinitis, as I told you, may be secondary to many mechanical things in the nose. So one of them is gross DNS, as I told you, C-shaped to one side, leading to atrophic changes in the opposite nasal cavity. So the opposite nasal cavity has so much of air turbulence going on there, it is roomy and it leads to atrophic changes. Now second is chronic underlying disease. So chronic sinusitis or lupus of the nose, tuberculosis nose, syphilis, leprosy, midline granulomas, we'll be discussing all this in the next lecture, sarcoidosis and excessive tissue destruction from nasal surgeries. Okay, so when you do debridement surgeries in the nose, there is excessive destruction leading to atrophic changes. Then trauma, accidents and radiation. All these can lead to secondary atrophic changes in the nose. Now, what is the prevalence? It is more common in India, China, and Egypt, whereas less common in developed countries, Europe, and North America. What is the pathology here? So, chronic inflammatory changes are seen. So, mainly you get atrophy of the ciliated columnar epithelium and resorption of the bone of the turbinates. So, this has been proved clinically by showing the presence of or positive reaction for alkaline phosphatase in these patients. So then there is squamous metaplasia of the epithelium. So you know the nose is lined by ciliated columnar epithelium. This undergoes a change into the squamous epithelium. So squamous metaplasia of the epithelium. Loss of goblet cells and the glands. Then you have an important change, that is terminal arterioles in the nose show end arteritis and periarteritis of blood vessels in majority of the cases, leading to reduced blood supply to the mucosa. This is called as type 1 type of changes. Whereas in some cases of atrophic rhinitis, you see vasodilatation in contrast. So this is called as type 2 change. Okay, so you must remember these two. submucosal infiltration of chronic inflammatory cells like lymphocytes. So this is all the pathology. So basically in the pathology you have to write about atrophy of the epithelium, resorption of the bone of the turbinates, squamous metaplasia, loss of goblet cells and glands, and that's why there is dryness. And in the arteries you have two changes. Type 1 there is endarteritis and periarteritis. In type 2 there is vasodilatation and submucous infiltration of the lymphocytes by the lymphocytes. Loss of epithelium leads to stagnation of thick viscid secretions, leading to secondary infection and crust formation. Okay. The fetor or the bad smell and loss of sensation can attract flies to lay eggs inside the nose of the patient, and these can hatch into larvae and pupae called as maggots. So this condition is called as myiasis of the nose. You spell it as MYIASIS, myiasis of the nose. Okay, so now here you are seeing on the left side the normal ciliated columnar epithelium. You can see the cilia on top. You are seeing the glands beneath in the submucosal region. Okay, and not many cells there. They are all normal cells of the epithelium. Whereas in the lower slide, you can see the squamous metaplasia of the ciliated columnar epithelium. Okay, so here is the squamous metaplasia with infiltration of the lymphocytes into the submucosa. So this is the pathological change. Now symptoms in the nose. So first is dryness. The patient will notice dryness of the nose. Then nasal obstruction, discharge, crust and also due to loss of somatic sensation. Okay, despite now there will be so loss of sense of smell. So there is air entering into the patient's nose, but because of the atrophy of the epithelium, the patient cannot perceive the air turbulence in the nose. Okay, then there is falling of crust. So greenish yellow crust fall from the patient's nose. So he may give history of falling of crust. Now headache and dryness of throat. So since there is obstruction of the sinuses, there will be headache. Okay, and dryness of the epistaxis when removal of crust is attempted. Okay, so these crusts are stuck to the underlying mucosa, and when you try to remove them, there may be epistaxis. Now, merciful anosmia. This is a pathognomonic feature where the foul smell emanates from the patient's nose, making him a social outcast. And this is complained by the relatives of the patient or the people around him, but the patient himself is unaware of this. So this terminology is called, or this is explained by the terminology called as merciful anosmia. And this occurs because of atrophic changes or atrophy in the olfactory mucosa of the nose, which leads to anosmia. So patient is totally unaware of the foul smell that he is exhibiting through the nose. Rather than that, the relatives or the patients around the persons around the patient complain of this foul smell. So this is referred to as merciful anosmia because patient is not aware of this bad smell. Okay, so three basic changes in atrophic rhinitis. One is, I told you, atrophy of the mucosa and the turbinates. Second is the fetid odor called as ozena, and third is formation of crust. So here you can see yellowish green crusts that are formed in the nose. Now, what are the signs? So on anterior rhinoscopy, you have a wide nostril. So it may be unilateral, as we said in secondary atrophic rhinitis, or the atrophic changes may be bilateral. So when there is some systemic cause or when it is secondary to some disease, you might get it in both the nostrils. Okay, so you get the wide nostrils, then roomy nasal cavities, such that sometimes on anterior rhinoscopy, now you know when you do anterior rhinoscopy, your nasopharynx is not visualized on it. But in these patients of atrophic rhinitis, so exclusively in patients of atrophic rhinitis, you can visualize the nasopharynx on anterior rhinoscopy because of the extensive atrophy of the turbinates that are seen in the nose. Roof and posterior nasal cavities are filled with greenish yellow, foul-smelling crusts and surrounded by purulent discharge. The mucosa is not pink as normal. It is pale. Sometimes if there is rhinitis in that, there may be congested mucosa also. But more what you see in these chronic cases is pale mucosa, atrophic changes, and this mucosa is insensitive to touch. So when you probe the mucosa, it is insensitive to touch, just like your polyps in the nose. The turbinates are atrophied and shriveled. Okay, and there is presence on posterior rhinoscopy. You'll see the dryness of the mucosa in the nasopharynx, again with atrophic changes and crust formation. Okay, now these are some clinical pictures of patients showing you the wide nostril. You can see the greenish black crust inside the nostril of the nose. Okay, see he has some edema also. This may be because of the secondary sinusitis to atrophic rhinitis. Now here you see this patient. Okay, there you can see some small white structures studded with a black dot. So this is nothing but maggots in the nose, which is referred to as myiasis, which is a complication of atrophic rhinitis. Okay, so in a patient, if you are seeing the doing the anterior rhinoscopy, you will just see these maggots like giving a lighthouse sign. So because of their small movement, and when you shine the torch, they start moving inside the nose, and you see the typically, as you see in ASOM cases like lighthouse, you see some flickering shining light inside the nose with some movement. So all these here you can see some 15-20 maggots in the nose. So this is because the patient's nose is insensitive to the sensation. The patient becomes unaware when the fly has gone inside the nose and laid eggs that have turned into pupa and larva, and then the pupa, and then formation of maggots. So just like your puffed rice, these maggots take the appearance, and they have a small black dot at the end of their head. Okay, so you can see these maggots in the nose. It's a very bad situation when patient gets maggot in the nose, because they start eating and destroying all the tissue inside. Now, again, these crusts formation is extensive. So here again you see. So if you see a patient in the OPD with like this formation of crust, greenish yellow crust and purulent discharge. So there is another condition called as mucormycosis in the nose, but in that you will get blackish crust formation, and that is again a fulminant fungal infection in the nose. Okay, so don't mistake it for that. That again is more common in immunocompromised patients having underlying diabetes or some immunocompromised state. But this atrophic rhinitis, this doesn't have a specific etiology. Okay, so the history again is important in differentiating both of these conditions, mucormycosis and atrophic rhinitis. So if you attempt to remove these extensive crusts, patient might have epistaxis. Now once the crusts are removed, you can see the atrophy of the turbinates beneath. Okay, so all this is to just give you a clinical impact of the picture of the formation of crust in atrophic rhinitis. Now, what are the investigations you do? Sorry. Now, investigations are routine hematological, that is your CBC, total count. So if there is infection, there will be leukocytosis. Okay, then your DC, ESR to rule out some specific secondary rhinitis changes like tuberculosis. Then you have your radiology of nose and paranasal sinuses. Okay, this is very important. You can go ahead if there is sinusitis and if patient has come with any complication like cellulitis of the face, especially in maggots and all, you have to do CT paranasal sinuses. Now serological tests to rule out leprosy. So leprosy, you can take a nasal smear and see for Mycobacterium leprae. For syphilis, you do VDRL blood test, and for tuberculosis, the Montos test. Now, ENT tuberculosis, you must remember, may be primary tuberculosis or secondary tuberculosis. Okay, so secondary to pulmonary tuberculosis, also you can get tuberculosis of in ENT, either ear, nose, and throat. But there is something called as primary tuberculosis of ENT, where you don't have pulmonary tuberculosis, but you have tuberculosis of either the, tuberculous mastoiditis, tuberculous otitis media, you have tuberculous laryngitis, okay, and tuberculosis in the nose. Now, this is to show you a normal CT of the paranasal sinuses and the CT in atrophic rhinitis patients. So what are you seeing here? You are seeing, this is your olfactory region, this is your middle turbinate, this is your inferior turbinate, this is your septum, okay. Then this is your maxillary sinuses on either side, this is your ethmoidal sinuses, and here you will get the frontal sinuses. So this is more anterior cut, so you are not seeing the frontal sinus, and more posterior cut you will see the sphenoid sinus. So both of them are not seen. Now the same thing here, you see the wide roomy nasal cavity, see the turbinates like as though they are chopped off, okay, chopped off appearance of the turbinates of the inferior and the middle turbinate. So all this tells you that there are atrophic changes. Now, second important finding in the CT of this patients of atrophic rhinitis is there will be hypoplastic or atrophy of the maxillary sinuses and resorption of bone, okay. So all these changes you must appreciate. That's why I have kept this normal CT and a CT of a patient of atrophic rhinitis. Can you appreciate the changes here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, how do you manage these cases? Now, this is very important. So, nothing is as a single management or treatment policy is going to completely cure this atrophic rhinitis patients. Reassurance of these patients is very important, because as for your sinusitis or for your specific conditions, you have specific treatment and then the patient cures within 10 days, 15 days max. But here this is a condition where we'll need continuous treatment, and patient has to have patience for at least 4 to 6 months for things to get better. So you're reassuring the patient, telling him the importance of the nasal hygiene, the importance of alkaline nasal douching is very important. And in the first visit itself, the patient has to be told and reassured that this is not going to change in 7 days, or things are not going to come back to normal in the nose within 7 or 10 days. You have to continue this treatment for 5 to 6 months to start seeing better results. Okay. So once you assure the patient will start accepting the disease. Now, nasal hygiene is improved by something called as alkaline nasal douching. So here you take water and you mix it with some chemicals, and the patient is told to wash his nose with this. It may be a 50 cc syringe, or you get these pumps and bulbs which can push. When the bulb is pushed, you can get the forceful this of the water in the nose, and these crusts can be dislodged. Okay, so the main aim of using all this douching is to dislodge the crust and allow the drainage of the nose. So whatever, if the crust, they block the sinus ostia, the patient is going to have chronic sinusitis. Okay, so to prevent this formation of crust and as well as to dislodge these crusts, you do something called as alkaline nasal douching. So this cleans the nose of stagnant discharge, crust and pus. So here we take 280 ml of water with 1 part of sodium bicarbonate, okay, with 1 part of sodium biborate and 2 parts of sodium chloride. So this can be easily made available in the house. So sodium chloride is nothing but salt. Soda bicarb is nothing but baking soda, okay, or edible soda. And sodium barbonate is the one that you use for your playing your carom. So all these things can be easily made available in the house, and this is mixed in 280 ml of water. So if you are taking 1 spoon of sodium bicarbonate and 1 spoon of sodium biborate, you have to take 2 spoons of common salt, sodium chloride, okay. And the patient is told to take this in a 50 cc syringe, and you attach a rubber tubing to it, and then he has to put this tubing in the nose and wash the nose forcefully with forceful jets of water at least 2 to 3 times a day. So just like having bath, I tell the patients, keep all this set of your things in the bathroom itself. So before having your bath, you clean it, okay. Then again afternoon once, and then evening once you come back from your work, you can do this alkaline nasal douche or before going to bed, okay. Now after the nose is cleaned and the crusts are all dislodged from the nose looks a little better. Then what the patient has to do, he has to apply 25% glucose in glycerin, okay. So what this glucose does, this glucose, anhydrous glucose, prevents the growth of saprophytic proteolytic organisms, right? It prevents the growth of saprophytic proteolytic organisms, while glycerin moisturizes the nasal mucosa. So again, this can be purchased from your pharmacist. So what we tell in the OPD to the patients is get a box of Glucon D powder that you usually put when you are dehydrated or for your electrolyte imbalance. So Glucon D has to be taken, and then you get easily glycerin that is to be applied in the oral cavity for your aphthous ulcers and all. So 50 ml or 20 ml of glycerin can be purchased. So glucose, this comes in powder form. So that this powder should be mixed with this 1 or 2 teaspoonfuls of glycerin, and that has to be applied by his little finger into the nose, or with the cotton earbud. He can apply it in the, she can apply it in the nose, okay. So glucose prevents the growth of saprophytic organisms, proteolytic organisms, and glycerin moisturizes the nasal mucosa. Then there is another local application. So as we said, it is more common in adolescent females at puberty, or more common in women. You can have local application of estradiol in Arcalis oil to the mucosa. So this also has given better results. So the mucosa starts healing. The other medical treatment is weekly injections of placental extract in the turbinates. So there is, it is available in the market as Placentrix, and Placentrix injections. These can be taken in a syringe, and you can inject it into the turbinates. So what do these placental extracts do? You know, placenta is a biogenic stimulant. So these placental extracts act as local biogenic stimulants and help in the regeneration of the epithelium and glandular tissue in the nose. So again, iron and vitamin supplements also can be given to these patients. Okay. So of this, alkaline nasal douche is very important. Now there is something called as quercetin drops, which are available in the market. So these contain a combination of estradiol, that is estrogen, vitamin D. So we say there is deficiency of fat soluble vitamins, that is A and D. So vitamin D, chlormycetin in the form of antibiotic. So all this comes in a mixture called as quercetin drops, and this can be instilled after the patient washes the nose, that is after alkaline nasal douching. Also, some people have tried giving streptomycin injections to these patients to inhibit the growth of organisms. So all this comes under the medical treatment. Now, there are numerous surgical procedures that have been aimed at narrowing the internal dimension of the nostrils. So once the internal dimension of the nostril is reduced, you get reduced drying, reduced turbulence of air in the nose, reduced drying and crust formation, and the mucosa is given rest and allowed to heal and regenerate. Okay, so this has been achieved by the following. So one is submucosal implantation either in the floor of the nostril. So if you put something in the floor is going to raise and the internal nostril is going to get narrowed. Likewise, if you put something in the lateral wall or in the septum of the nose, okay, so some of these implants are put either in the floor or in the lateral wall or in the medial wall, that is the septum of the nose. And the only aim is to narrow the internal dimension of the nose so that it reduces the crust formation, the mucosa is given time to rest and given time for regeneration. Okay, so we have seen small children coming with atrophic rhinitis, and when we tell them all these things, almost by 5-6 years they are totally cured of this. We won't say totally cured, but they are, the crust formation stops, the mucosa that was pale starts regenerating and starts becoming pink. Okay, so this is important. Now submucosal implantation can be done by using various materials, that is autogenous bone graft pieces, then cartilage pieces, dermofat grafts, silicone, paraffin paste, and Teflon in glycerin paste. So some are synthetic materials, some are the autologous materials. Okay, so bone graft, cartilage graft, derma fat, all these are autologous. These tissues got from the patient. Silicone, paraffin, Teflon, these are synthetic things that are biocompatible and can be implanted in the patient's nose, either in the floor or the lateral wall or the medial wall of the nose. Now, you can do a surgery called as Young's operation. So what do you do in this surgery? You completely keep the patient's nostril closed for a period of 6 months to few years. Okay, so this is possible in cases of unilateral atrophic rhinitis. So the nostril, so you elevate the mucosal flap from the septum as well as from the lateral wall of the nose, and you stitch it in the center so that completely the air is stopped from the exterior to enter into the nose. This is called as Young's operation or Young's surgery for atrophic rhinitis. Now there is, in contrast to this, there is something called as modified Young's operation. Okay, so here this is nothing but like the Young's operation, but instead of completely closing the flap, you keep a 3 millimeter opening for the air to enter. So patient shouldn't feel suffocated. So in cases of bilateral atrophic rhinitis, it is better to do modified Young's surgery so that there will be some amount of air for the patient to breathe and patient will not feel hypoxic. Okay, so Young's operation is one in wherein there is complete closure of the nostrils by elevating flap from the medial wall and the lateral wall of the nose and stitching it, and this is kept for a period of 6 months to few years, and after that you see the healing things in the nose, you can cut this and you can revert the nose to his normal. Okay, so these flaps can be reposed back. And modified Young surgery is wherein you do the partial closure of the nostrils again for a period of 6 months to few years, but keeping a 3 millimeter opening. Then it is referred to as modified Young surgery. So as I told you, this is done by raising skin flaps from inside the vestibule of the nose from the medial and the lateral wall and stitching them together. So this surgery aims to give rest to the nose and promote epithelial regeneration. Now there is something called as Lawton-Slager's operation. Lawton-Slager's operation. So here you do medialization of the lateral wall of the nose. So when you are elevating the flaps from both sides of the mucosa, it is called, or mucosa of the vestibule, it is called as Young's and modified Young's surgery. Whereas in Lautenschlager's, you remember L and M. So what is done is medialization of the lateral wall. So Lautenschlager's operation. See, this picture shows you the Young's operation. So what is done here is, this is the flap from the medial wall, this is the flap from the lateral wall, and by taking 3 cuts superiorly and 2 in the floor, you stitch it like this, like an inverted Y. So see, no gap is kept here, and that is why it is Young's surgery. So the same, just a clip of the video here showing you how we elevate the mucosa from the lateral wall. So one cut is here, one cut is given here, and you elevate the flaps and stitch it in an inverted Y shape. Am I clear? Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
This is to show you modified Young's surgery. See, a 3 millimeter gap is placed inside. So the flaps are stitched here, but you keep a 3 millimeter hole or opening for air to enter inside. So the patient doesn't become uncomfortable. So especially in cases of bilateral atrophic rhinitis, you will prefer to do modified Young's operation, because it is to be kept for 6 months and years. Just imagine pinching your nose for 2 seconds and opening your mouth. It is very difficult. You will have dryness of the oral cavity, you will have repeated pharyngitis, and in these patients though, we are going to keep it for 6 months to 1 year or a few years. So with modified Young's, the patient is a little more comfortable than the Young's. But in cases of unilateral atrophic rhinitis, because his other nostril is working normally, you can always prefer Young's surgery. Now, the next surgery, so we saw what is Young's operation, what is modified Young's operation. So under operative, we had implantation, so submucosal implantation of various autologous and synthetic materials in the nose. Then we had Young's surgery, wherein you completely close the nostril for a certain period of time. Then you have modified Young's, wherein a 3 millimeter opening is kept for some air to enter into the nose, whereas rest of it is blocked for healing. Then you have the Lautenschlager's operation, wherein there is lateralization of the medial wall. Sorry. Then you have the Wittmach's operation. So Wittmach's operation is transplantation of the parotid duct into the maxillary sinus to moisten the nasal cavity. Okay, so you know these ducts have secretions, so they will increase the mucus formation in the nose and the sinuses and help the mucosa to regenerate and heal by moisturizing the nasal cavity. So what is Wittmach's surgery or Wittmach's operation? The parotid duct, that is the stenza. Where does this parotid duct open? Any idea? Yes. So this parotid duct opens at the crown of the upper second molar tooth. Okay. So you are going to transplant this duct into the maxillary sinus and moisten the nasal cavity. Then the next surgical treatment is stellate ganglion block. So this relieves the autonomic dysfunction. Okay, I told you there is some dysfunction of the sympathetic activity, and for this you can try stellate ganglion block to relieve the atrophic changes. Next is nasal submucosal implantation of placenta. So when we were PGs, we used to go to the gynec department, we used to collect the placenta, we used to sterilize it by immersing it in chemicals, and then these pieces would be submucosally implanted in the patients. Okay, so this also we have done as a treatment modality. So these are the different surgical remedies for atrophic rhinitis. Now, prognosis in these patients, as I told you, you have to reassure them it's a guarded prognosis, because it's not that by after, like for tuberculosis, he takes 6 months of AKT and he's cured. It's not like that in atrophic rhinitis. These patients cannot be fully cured, whatever mode of treatment you are giving them, be it medical, be it surgical. Only essence of our treatment is to maintain hygiene and curtail the fetid odor coming out of these patients' nose. Okay, so that neither he is troubled nor the people around him. Okay, so there is a stigma in these patients. People start moving away from these patients. Okay, they don't tolerate these patients. Social gatherings, these patients are not allowed. So because of that, these all alkaline nasal douche and all these treatment modalities, glucose and glycerin application, all these essence of treatment is to maintain hygiene and curtail the fetid odor that comes out of the patient's nose, of which he is not aware. Okay, if you start sweating, you try to smell yourself, you'll just apply some this and you'll move perfume. Okay, but since these patients are not aware of the smell itself, they are not bothered. Okay, and then they don't understand why people are avoiding them. So this all has to be explained. So more of counseling of these atrophic rhinitis patient is to be done before you start the treatment. Otherwise, he will go from, he will just do doctor shopping, go from one doctor to the other and tell each doctor that that doctor has taken money and has not cured me. Okay. So the first time only when he comes to you for consultation, you are going to tell him this is going to take time and you have to have repeated visits to me in order to get better soon. So surgery aims to reverse the condition, but success rates of these surgeries are not very encouraging. So in general, the prognosis of these atrophic rhinitis patients is guarded, is not very good. Now, what can be the sequelae and complications of atrophic rhinitis? So because of the widening of the nose, the atrophy of the turbinates, there might be deformity of slow chronic changes are going to lead to deformity of the nose, saddling of the nose because of bone resorption. Then septal perforation. Suppose the patient has bilateral atrophic rhinitis, the mucosa is going to get atrophy, the bone is going to get resorbed, and the cartilage also will get resorbed, and there will be and crust formation, and when you remove the crust, there will be through and through hole in the septum. So from one nostril you can see the other nostril. This is septal perforation because of atrophic rhinitis. So there are various causes of septal perforation. We will deal with that in our future lectures. So one of the cause is atrophic rhinitis. Then myiasis. I showed you that picture. Due to unhygienic conditions, the patient sleeps on open without any mosquito net, okay, without covering his head. So what we tell these patients is, when you are sleeping, you are not aware of the surroundings. That time these flies can go inside and lay eggs. So these patients are supposed to cover their head with a bed sheet, okay, or compulsorily they are supposed to use a mosquito net while sleeping, so that these flies which are nearby, especially in villages, you know, where they have the buffaloes, cows tied, they have their sheds just near their houses. So here there is a lot of tendency for the flies to wander here and there, and just these patients are used to sleeping in their verandas, or they just sleep without much of botheration, and then that time unawarely the fly can go inside the nose and lay eggs. These eggs become larvae, and then the pupa, and then the maggot formation, and this is a very miserable condition called as myiasis of the nose. So So you can get a short note on myiasis, which is nothing but maggot formation in the nose. And these maggots start eating the soft tissue and lead to extensive destruction of tissue. So I have seen patients in my 25 years of practice, wherein these patients of atrophic rhinitis, some of them with maggots have almost the palate that forms the floor of the nose is eroded and the maggots are coming inside the oral cavity. The maggots can go from the eustachian tube to the ear. All these cases we have seen this, and there is extensive tissue destruction because of this maggots. They act like scavengers and go on eating the nasal tissue and lead to palatal perforation, septal perforation, so on and so forth. They might enter into the cranial cavity also from the olfactory region. So such bad is this sequelae of atrophic rhinitis, that is myiasis, formation of maggots in the nose. Epistaxis, I told you, crust formation and dislodging of the crust can lead to severe epistaxis, that is bleeding from the nose. Then anosmia is because of the atrophy or loss of the olfactory mucosa. The patient is unable to appreciate smell. And then I told you the cranial cavity, the bone can be perforated there and the patient can go in for meningitis. The infection can spread to the meninges and patient can have meningitis. So the sequelae and complications of atrophic rhinitis, to summarize, is deformity of the nose, saddling, septal perforation, myiasis due to unhygienic conditions leading to maggot formation, leading to extensive destruction of the tissues, epistaxis, anosmia, and meningitis. Okay, so this picture just tells you some of the complications. See, headache, sinusitis, pharyngitis, okay. Then the patient himself goes into depression because of the society rejecting these patients. Then is the maggot formation. See these maggots, small worms inside the nose, okay. And then eustachian tube obstruction leading to acute or chronic suppurative otitis media. So all these are complications of atrophic rhinitis. Another picture showing you the maggots in the nose. So all these, see, this is one worm, appears like a puffed rice with a small dot at its head end. So see these, they stick inside, and when you shine light, they crawl and go inside deeper. They move away from light. So in the first instance itself, you have to diagnose myiasis. Okay, because when you repeatedly shine light, they just start moving more inside the nasal cavity. So here what we do is, for these myiasis, we instill either glycerin or your Johnson oil, baby oil in the nose. Sometimes we used to use this turpentine oil, but we saw that some patients can go into bronchospasm because it has a very strong smell. Okay, but the maggots start coming out easily after dying because of this turpentine fumes. Okay, but now since the patients may go in for bronchospasm, we are using these glycerin, or we are using the baby oils. So the oil is instilled in the nose, and in this oily media, the maggots are deprived of oxygen, they suffocate and they die. Okay, and then you, with forceps, you can start easily removing one maggot from the nose. Okay, this is how we remove the maggots. So repeatedly the patient has to instill the nose, lie in a sitting position, the maggots will start coming down. Now these patients, if they are admitted, they are supposed to be kept in isolation wards. So they are infectious to others. If they are having maggots, the maggots are going to crawl on the beds in the wards. So, and once you remove each maggot, it is a live insect. So you are going to put it in spirit and destroy it. Okay. So you're just not going to remove it and leave it there. They'll start crawling here and there. So these patients are to be isolated and kept in infectious ward. They cannot be kept with your routine operative patients in the ENT ward. Thank you for your patient listening. Any queries, any questions? Yes, am I audible?
No,
Ma'am,
yes, yes, ma'am.
what is the success rate of cleaning that maggot with the baby oil or glycerin?
See, you don't want these insects in the nose. Once they are inside, I told you they are going to go on eating up the tissue. Patient is so restless. Patient is devoid of sleep. You must see these patients. They come with a cellulitis of the face, edematous nose. Okay, and they are miserable. You have serosanguinous discharge, foul smell. So once you remove these maggots, the patient becomes at ease. Okay, sleeps for 2 days. He was deprived of his sleep for 7 to 10 days because of these maggots. They give that dirty crawling sensation in the nose. Just imagine, just something enters into your nose when you're driving your vehicle or your ear, you get so disturbed, you want to remove it. Just imagine these 50s and 40 maggots in the nose sitting and just giving a crawling sensation in the nose. So it pains them. They are eating all the tissue there. Okay. So success rate you cannot say. Once you remove all these maggots and give IV antibiotics to the patient is at ease, is calmed down. Okay. Because sometimes we have seen, if these patients don't come to the hospital, they go in for a suicidal tendency. They commit suicide because that devastating condition. These CA cases, unhygienic, neglected patients, okay? It's very miserable. So rather than the cure rate, it is you're calming these patients, you're treating them, you're healing them, okay? That is more important. And it is a complication. It doesn't occur in all patients of atrophic rhinitis. Only in some patients, especially villagers who are not aware of their hygienes, this can occur. Am I clear?